The quality of your attention is what determines the quality in terms of happiness, the quality of your life, much more than your external circumstances. Remember our example of sitting on the beach with a cocktail or washing the dishes. When are you happier? Well, that really depends on what your mind is doing at that time.
Messy and masterful. In this podcast, we speak about the success of people who have achieved, built, or done something amazing, special, remarkable, noteworthy, and/or fabulous. Think of presidents, doctors, chefs, architects, filmmakers, writers, philosophers, CEOs, journalists, and the list goes on of people who've had a genuine impact on this world. But rather than underlining their career victories, we speak about the challenges they needed to overcome to actually get there. In each episode, we discuss 3 of such challenges, obstacles, difficulties, and/or hurdles with our guest, putting the messy of their lives next to the masterful. A very warm welcome to you. My name is Aldo, and I'm so happy you could make it. So sit back, relax, and download the podcast here. A very good morning to everyone listening in, and even a better good morning to one of our favorite guests, Dr. Michael Vlerick. Michael, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Aldo. Thanks for having me again.
I see a very big smile, Michael, and with reason, because I heard the fascinating, great news that your book has gone for another rerun with the print. So it's on its 2nd print, which is quite an accomplishment. Very well done, Michael. Big congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm happy it gets some traction and it inspires people. So very happy.
Yeah, I'm very happy for you as well. When you look back now, because at some point you must have thought, okay, let me write a book about this. Had you ever thought it would get this big?
Not quite, but I already had a feeling when I talked to people before publishing the book about the topic that this is a topic that really interests people, and for good reason, obviously. I mean, it's about happiness, the quality of your life. I mean, everything we do is in some sense in the service of happiness. And so a book that elucidates some of the features that lead or prevent happiness, I think can be of great value to people.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think the tone of voice, as well as the academic findings that you bring in there, makes it a very original interpretation, I think. So that's what I really like about it. It's not just me saying, what is happiness, because I'm not a philosopher. It's you looking at it from an academic angle and trying to convey the wisdoms that you find in philosophy, bringing it to kind of normal life, right? So people who are non-philosophers, for them to get an understanding about it. And then also giving your own advice, which brings us to the topic of this interview, which is the last interview around your book. I'm very sad that it's the last one because I've learned so much and I can talk for hours with you, Michael. But it's about 10 things that can make us happier. Am I correct?
Yeah, I would say 10 concrete steps you can take towards a happier life.
Wonderful. Well, I have my pen and paper ready. So take it away. What is number 1?
All right. So number 1, and obviously this episode will only make sense if you've listened to the previous episodes, because we're not going to rehash everything that is being said. This is very much about looking back what we've covered, and then about how can we concretely implement these necessary steps in order to create a deeply happy life, a life in which we're freed from these very frequent, intense, painful, negative mental reactions, and a life in which we are deeply content with all of the good things in our lives. Mm-hmm. Right? So the basis is always understanding. You need to have proper insight into your psychological programming, your genetic programming, as I've called it in previous episodes. Without that, you will be looking for happiness in the wrong places. Right? So crucially, you must understand that you are wired, and we've covered this, you are wired to focus on everything that went bad, that goes bad, and that could go bad in your life. And you're also wired, and we all are, to adapt really quickly to improved circumstances, and from there start craving new good things, and that this mental pattern will never end, right? Unless you work on yourself, right? So that is what we've covered. And so what do you need to do to work on yourself? How can you increase your baseline happiness to which you constantly revert? Well, first of all, freeing yourself from negative mental reactions. So not reacting mentally to these sticks, as I call them, to these negative emotions, to these triggers, not feeding these negative emotions, equanimity, which we've covered. And then second, not feeding into the craving and to the dissatisfaction, right? And training your brain to bring the attention to everything that goes well in your environment and not constantly being on the lookout for what you miss or what you don't have. And I think this is such an important and a crucial element. And without the knowledge from, these wisdom traditions, but most of all from, scientific research on happiness, we typically, and I know I did before, right? We think our happiness is there in the future when we'll grasp that next carrot, and our happiness is threatened by this stick and everything that could go wrong, right? And so we obsess with these things, and in fact, what we're doing is we're keeping ourselves from being happy. So we look for happiness, but we create unhappiness. And so understanding this is the crucial part to liberate yourself from a lot of that suffering.
Good. So the first step is understanding the stick and the carrot principle.
Exactly. And your genetic programming, kind of dispelling the ruse of your genes, right? So I've called it the ruse of our genes in a previous episode.
Yeah.
The ruse of your genes is to make you believe that this next, imagined or not, but mostly imagined threat is really threatening your long-term happiness. We see that is not the case, and that this next good thing that might happen to you is what you need to be happy. You will adapt to it, and you will just crave for more. Know this. This is crucial.
Good. I've written it down. So understanding your genetic ruse, know that there are sticks and carrots out there that can confuse us and that actually are not going to make us happy.
Exactly.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wonderful. And so once we understand this, well, obviously we need to train our brain not to react to these sticks and carrots and to develop the mental habits and the automatisms that will lead to a deeply fulfilling and happy and freeing life, right? And so we'll talk about all of these different habits. Meditation was covered, but also, sports and things like that are definitely connected with more well-being. But before we get there, and this is such an important part, we need to address how we can develop good habits and how we can get rid of bad habits. Because you must realize that our entire lives are run by habits. How healthy, how successful, how happy you are is the product of your habits, because 95% of what you do in a day is on automatic pilot, and that's a good thing. I mean, if we would have to think everything over and laboriously, weigh pros and cons before taking any action, I mean, life would become unlivable. It would cost a lot of energy. We wouldn't get anything done, right? So we're habit creatures. What you do the first thing when you wake up, well, it's probably given by habit. Some people, they go out and they have a run. Other people will go straight on their laptops and start working. You may have a shower first thing. Anyways, all of this, your days are ruled by habits. So in order to change your life, you must change your habits. And so how do you develop a habit, a new habit? For instance, let's say you want to go for a run. Let's start a running habit, right? What do you do? Well, first of all, it's important to do it very regularly. Ideally, we do it daily, the same time every day. So let's say you say, well, I'll just devote, 10, 20 minutes. It's also important to start small. Every day, 8 a.m. or 7 a.m., whenever I wake up, I go for a small run, right? Don't miss it. Try to do it every day. In the beginning, it's going to take a lot of discipline, I guess. And so you're not in the habit of doing this, so you may need to remind yourself. But so that is the crucial feature, doing it daily or at least regularly at the same time every time. Second one is you need to make it as easy as possible to succeed, right? So if you develop a new habit, it's very important not to be too ambitious, right? If you want to start running, make running a new habit. Don't start with, I'm going to run 1 hour every day. No, this is way too ambitious. And I'm not even talking about problems with injuries and so forth. I'm just talking about the mental stuff here. But so start very easy, very small, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, but not more. Right? Because otherwise, at some point, you won't have, the willpower and you're going to break the habit. So make the new habit as easy as possible. Later, when it's a habit, you can actually start expanding the habit. Right? So that's an incredibly important part as well.
Yeah.
And then what really helps as well is to have some kind of reward for doing the habits. For some people, it can be just, having, a box that you can check, or
Journal.
having your streak, exactly, not breaking your streak, but perhaps you can buy yourself a present, something like that, or you can promise yourself a present. And then research shows if you don't miss a day, if you do this regularly after, let's say, a month and a half, a month to 2 months, it will become a habit. It will be like brushing your teeth, and it will go automatically. It will take way less energy of you to continue that habit.
I would like to add one more, because I've also done my research into habits, is like the adoption process of habits. You started with saying, you want to change things in your life. Don't try to do 7 habits in one go, right? So start with one. As you said, if it's the running, then only do the running. Let that be the change then for your day until it becomes a habit. Don't do 7 of them right away, because then your life's going to be too different. And you will, you're at risk of ending up with nothing, right? So it's exactly best to do one change at a time. And another thing is try to find when I see things around change, whether it's weight loss or loads of sports or whatever. Very often that comes from a place of unhappiness, of insecurity, of kind of all these anxious feelings, these sticks potentially, whereby you're not happy with yourself. But I think it's also very good to try to create a sense of peace and quiet upon which you can build this change. So as you say, and that can be implemented in the reward system. If you've gone for a run once, be proud of the fact that you've done that. You don't need to over-congratulate yourself, but you can say, hey, I started something nice. I started something beautiful. So don't associate it with, I need to change more or do more or whatever more. Try to pace yourself by giving yourself the love that is needed in order to implement such a habit.
Definitely, yeah, very good points there, Aldo. And I would say, as a rule, always be as kind as possible to yourself. And even if you fail these habits and then you have to start over again, and you're not doing the things you should do, be gentle with yourself. Yeah. This takes time, and be patient with yourself. This will definitely set you up for success. And as you pointed out, so important to do it one habit at a time. And you can't just, ingrain, 5 habits at a time. That's not possible. It's way too ambitious. It's not going to work. So one at a time. But since it only takes let's say 2 months, if you have a whole year of creating habits, well, you will quickly change your life for the better.
Yeah.
All right.
Wonderful. That's good with the habits. And Atomic Habits, that book by James Clear, I think is a wonderful book. It has great takeaways on that level. So
exactly.
I just wanted to recommend that one. Yeah, I think it's very good. It gives you a very concrete guide to how you can build specific habits and yeah.
Yeah, and it's such an amazingly important skill. I want to emphasize that again. And everything we've said in the last 4 episodes, if you're not going to implement them, and implement them takes creating certain habits and discarding other habits, well, they're not going to make a difference, right? So it's only through actions that you actually make a difference when it comes to happiness, to things you do. Insight is the basis, but then you need to implement that insight. Otherwise, it's not going to make much of a difference.
Yeah. I wanted to very quickly share kind of my personal journey in creating a habit, because I have been doing yoga every single day for the better part of 8 months now. With the exception of, the recent turbulent situation that I've undergone with the loss of my father. We spoke about that earlier. There was a small interruption. So I went from every day to do it 2 or 3 times a week. I am sad that I lost my streak. On the other hand, now yesterday I started again, kind of as frenetic as I did it before. I haven't really felt like I lost anything, right? So the streak is nice. I was really journaling the streak with the number of days and kind of whatever as a reward. Now, unforeseen circumstances have ended my streak, but I still feel like a winner because I managed to do it for 8 months every single day, and I feel like I've really advanced myself physically and mentally, kind of on that level. So, just when it speaks to kindness, the fact that you don't manage every day, you should still allow yourself to look back and see, hey, here's what you've done up until today, and there's no time like the present to get back into things again, right? So that's what I mean with kindness here. So I just wanted to add that one because there was another habit advisor, who basically said, like, the streak can also motivate you. The fact that you've been able to do it every single day and that you can talk about that to other people is a good incentivization as well. The danger of that is, like, if you then fail in the streak, then you might be a little bit disappointed. Yeah. Well, so be it, right?
Yeah, that's an important point, and especially with things like meditation, many of the apps that you use to learn to meditate, and then I would recommend that in the beginning, use a streak, and that can be exactly the reward you need to get it going. You don't want to lose your streak, and so you keep on doing it. But at a certain point, it can become counterproductive as well, right?
Yeah.
You need to be flexible in life. Things happen.
Yeah.
And so it's very important not to obsess about the streak as well, right? So use it as a tool and then discard it, right?
Yeah.
So I had the same with meditation. I was at like a year and a half streak, and then things kept happening, and I didn't have time to meditate. And then I felt I felt bad about breaking my streak, but then I understood how absurd it was, right?
Yeah,
you could just meditate for 1 minute on the app and you wouldn't have broken your streak, but that felt like cheating the system.
Yeah.
And anyways, but the whole thing can become counterproductive. So at some point, when the habit is created, leave the streaks, lose all of that, and you will see, you will keep doing it. You will want to do it, right?
Yeah.
So
100%.
once the habit is there and you felt the benefit from the habit, you don't need any of these external stimulation. But in the beginning, it can definitely be a help. So use it wisely and then discard it.
Wonderful. So number 1, understanding. Number 2, habits.
There's 2 parts to habits. First of all, there's creating the habits that we've covered. Then this discarding bad habits, right? So we're going to want to create habits like meditate, and then we're getting into them, and then move a lot, and then eat healthily and so forth. But also discarding habits, right? So maybe let's take the example of social media use. Maybe you're in social media way too long, and then we've talked about that this negatively impacts your mental well-being, and you want to reduce that or stop for a while, right? So what do? The problem is you can't just delete a habit from your head, from your brain. That habit is deeply ingrained. And so the way to do it is that first of all, you need to detect the trigger of that habit. It's often triggered by something, right? So there's something that will trigger you to go on social media. Discover what these triggers, there may be more than one, obviously, what these triggers are. And whenever you're triggered, well, you need to implement a replacement routine, another habit. And make, again, and this is so important, make the new replacement routine as simple as possible to execute. Maybe it's just taking, 3 mindful breaths and just calming the system down that way, and make executing the old habits that you want to replace as hard as possible. So when it comes to social media, maybe, delete the apps from your phone and then log out on your laptop and so forth. That will take time to get back into the platform. And just, that delay in time and those extra steps you need to take give you time to reason and to calm yourself, like, okay, no, I was again drawn to social media, I'm not going to do it, right? So this gives you a lot of the opportunity to kind of know what's going on and execute the replacement habit. And then again, it's a question of time, right? And a question of reward. Reward yourself for not doing it for so long. And also, be consistent. And again, research shows that if you're consistent over time, that negative or that bad habit you want to replace, that will actually disappear. And this goes as well for, I would say, addictions, right? So which are like deeply, deeply ingrained habits. And it's definitely not easy. We've already covered how mindfulness can help with addictions and so forth. So I won't go back into that. But in a way, it's getting rid of a habit. And so, for instance, smoking, whenever you feel the need to smoke, well, be mindful of that. Don't go for the cigarettes. Observe the sensations, but also you can have a replacement habit, right? You can do something else instead, and you can rewire your brain that way.
If I can make a suggestion for a replacement habit, look at things that you also want to do, so things that are also on your list, and try that as a replacement, right? So to give you an example, I've always been an avid reader. I've really always enjoyed reading, but as a father of a young daughter, like a 4 years old, in the very beginning, it was very hard to find any time in your day to still read, right? Until I kind of realized the time that I spend on my phone, if I somehow find a way to replace the time that I spend on my phone with reading, then I'm going to be a lot more satisfied, and I'm going to have a lot more energy and a lot happier about myself and my day, because then I still progress with reading. So one of the things that we implemented was no phones in the bedroom, right? The fact that there was a phone in the bedroom was because we needed an alarm clock. We didn't have an alarm clock. So there were phones in the bedroom. That's how these things start. So we said, no, the phones stay downstairs. And then we were just talking about morning routine. What's the first thing that you do? I enjoy reading like for 20 minutes or half an hour in the morning, right? If I can. I'm an early bird, so I wake up earlier. So instead of grabbing my phone first thing in the morning, I grab my book, right? And that is a good way of replacing something. The replacement doesn't need to be something artificial that you haven't done before, or that you dislike, or something that, is completely new to you. It could also be something that you said, hey, I always wanted to do this, but I never managed to. So if you looking at phone use, what are other things in your life that you enjoy doing, and why don't you try to use that as the replacement habit for the overuse of your phone? You're going to use your phone anyways, right? Because many of us need to do it professionally. But why not avoid using it in the morning and then go for that run, as you said, Michael, or go for that meditation, or go for reading, or anything else that you have always wanted to do as the replacement habit. And I assure you, it will make your life a lot more joyful, and guaranteed you will become a happier person.
Yeah, definitely good point. And a very good point about the replacement habit has to be something you can do without any kind of resistance, right? So I wouldn't say, if you've never meditated and you're constantly on social media, that every time you're triggered to go on social media, you go for like a 10-minute meditation. This will be too hard, right? Because then you're creating a habit and you're discarding a habit. Use something that is very simple, very easy, and if possible, enjoyable to you, to replace the bad habits. And then, because otherwise you'll make it much harder on yourself. So that's an important point.
Nice. So implement a habit, find a good replacement habit.
All right.
That's the habit section, right?
All right. And so which habits should we create, right? So this is what we're going to cover. I mean, what to do in our days, and this is what we're going to cover now, right? So, and the first point is stop tampering with your happiness hormones and your stress hormone, right? We've covered the happiness hormones, dopamine, oxytocin, or cuddle hormone, dopamine, or I want hormone, that gives us a kind of euphoric feeling, serotonin, the everything is going well kind of hormone, that gives us this kind of easy, satisfied feeling. Now, we need a steady level of these happiness hormones. They're actually mostly neurotransmitters, but we need a steady level of those to feel good in our days, right? On the other hand, you have cortisol, or stress hormone, that peaks whenever we're stressed. You have adrenaline and so forth that is also produced then. And we need to keep that at bay, right? So we've covered chronic stress and the havoc it wreaks on our bodies, but also on our mental well-being. And so the best way to do that is by living a healthy life. And what do I mean with a healthy life? Well, enough sleep, healthy food, and enough movement. That's basically it. And for too long, the focus of these habits has entirely been on, your physical health, your longevity. And of course, we know that's incredibly important. There's nothing new there. But more and more, it's clear that it has an equally important bearing on our mental well-being, on our happiness.
There is no point in denying it. I am in love. And you might have already known it, that I was in love with podcasting and interviewing people all over the world. Well, I'm also in love now with a recording tool for our podcast episodes, which is called riverside.fm. I've kissed many frogs when it came to recording episodes, but this one is really the one with the most amazing studio features. Riverside really offers you everything you need in creating the perfect episode, whether these are short or long, whether these are multiple people you're talking to or just you, or whether this is about your show notes or the video recording or even creating easy snippets that you can use on social media. Riverside truly has it all. If you go to our show notes, you will find a link to Riverside. And if you use that link, you'll even get a 20% discount. Yes, you heard that correctly. A 20% discount in getting started with this incredible podcast recording tool. Look no more. Riverside.fm is here.
So if you don't do this, if you are sleep deprived, if you eat lousy, unhealthy food, if you live a completely sedentary life, you're really, shorthanding yourselves in terms of long-term happiness. It may seem like the easiest and the most attractive option in the short term, but in the long term, it leads to chronic stress and it leads to feeling listless and unhappy, basically. So this is incredibly important. A healthy lifestyle is needed for more than your physical health, also for your mental well-being. Mm-hmm. And connected to that, of course, are these artificial carrots, as I call them, these addictive substances from alcohol to, certain other drugs. But also, we've covered it, social media, gambling, perhaps, these kind of things. Everything, basically, that can be addictive. What happens there, we've covered that in a previous episode, well, we get this artificial dopamine peaks. And so, as a result, the natural dopamine production starts to drop. And so that means our lives become more listless. So again, having 10, 15 beers may be great for your joy in the short term, but in the long term, you're definitely paying a price, and a very important price. And you must know that the reward, even in the short term, decreases with use over time. So that 10th beer after 20 years of heavy drinking is not going to feel nearly as good as when you first started out. But then also equally importantly, you're going to start paying a massive price whenever you're not consuming, and life is going to become a bit more dull, listless, and so forth.
Yeah.
So very important.
So live a healthy life. I think that's good, but I also want to encourage people to break it down here as well, right? Because living a healthy life, as you said, it's your diet, it's your exercise, it's your sleep. So these are, if you have all three working against you at this moment in time, then don't try to change all of them right away, right? For instance, one of the things that when I feel that I'm not eating healthy or whatever, I kind of look for, okay, what is it that I need? And in many cases, as weird as that may sound, it starts with me drinking more water. Just the fact that you drink more water than you would normally do, just to have a glass of water next to you when you take a coffee, or when you want to drink something else, just drinking more water is a very easy way already to get something started. With exercise, it doesn't mean you don't, as you said, you don't need to go on a 10-mile run for 1 hour. Start with just doing a small walk outside. 10 minutes, go for a walk around the block. That's already a lot more than you have been doing it before. So start small. Don't start too drastically with, okay, I'm going to change my life. Don't be too triggered, because here's another carrot for you. Once you start Googling this, you see, of course, people who are very well built, ripped, as they say, who kind of, go at it at this bike. And if you are not in that phase, then it's more of a deterrent for you than that you feel kind of attracted to that person because you say, well, listen, I'm too far away from this person. So just start small until you build up on a little bit of energy to do the next step and the next step and the next step, right? I think that is very important, that living a healthy life is kind of, there are many components to living a healthy life, and you need to look at, each of these components and first start with making very small changes there, very small changes that you can easily do to kind of make the changes. And that change will give you already this feeling of accomplishment. You can then make it, go with the habit creation format, if you will, and then, build up from there.
Yeah, very good point. So definitely one habit at a time. Again, discarding one habit at a time. Don't try to just radically change everything in your life. This is not going to work. This is setting you up for failure. Very important. And start where you are indeed. If you can't run at this point, walk. Exactly. And know that the further you are from this ideal, the bigger the gains you stand to make. I mean, the more of an impact and a difference it's going to make. So the low-hanging fruit is there. And just start plucking at the low-hanging fruit. And then you'll work your way up to higher-hanging fruit, I would say.
And with food as well, also look at the replacement habit, right? I think that's also very important. Instead of eating a bag of crisps, go for something that's also tasty, but just less fatty, right? Go for carrots and hummus, or something just slightly less dangerous for your health, right? So that could also be a replacement.
No, definitely.
You don't need to punish yourself, right? It's not about punishment. It's about, replacing certain things, just being more aware of certain things, and slowly but surely build up to gain a healthy diet, or to gain an exercise habit, or to get better sleep.
And as always, with these habit replacements, try to make the old habit as hard as possible to execute and the new ones as easy as possible. So when it comes to healthy eating, well, don't buy the crisps and the unhealthy stuff, and only get healthy stuff. And then whenever you're hungry, you're going to look in the pantry, you're going to look in the fridge, and you're going to find healthy options. And that's all you're going to have. So that can help massively. But as always, be gentle and don't try to be perfect, because perfect is the enemy of good. So you can have a cheat meal and all of that. I mean, don't be too obsessive with these things, because that also sets you up for failure. So always, as a rule, always be kind with yourself and take it from where you are.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. And so once we've got that healthy lifestyle going for us, well, we can become more ambitious. And this is where I would say meditation comes in. And we've covered meditation in the last episode, what it does for you, what the purpose is, what kinds of meditations there are. But so this is going to be a crucial first step to kind of rewire our brains and kind of free ourselves from, these negative mental reactions, and then the craving that follows and the dissatisfaction that follows from, chasing these false carrots. So having this meditation habit or creating a meditation habit can really revolutionize your well-being. But again, it takes time. Be patient and start where you are. Don't be too ambitious right away. Start small, and we've covered this in the previous episode. Well, what can really help in the beginning is using an app, for instance. There's good apps. I definitely recommend, the Waking Up app by Sam Harris, which is the one I'm using now as well. So this this can be of immense benefit. It can really, start a whole new life, I would say, but it's really about the experience of life, right? So,
out of own interest, you have things like meditative yoga, because it's still the format of meditation, as we discussed in our previous interview. It's quite broad, right? So there's also meditation whereby, and the name escapes me, I think you know better than I do, but whereby you need to there's a guru that you kind of need to thank for the fact that you meditate, right? So there's certain ways of meditation that it could be an acquired taste. So I just want to make sure that everyone who's out there's loads of formats of meditation that you can work on, right? It's really about the creating space in your brain. You don't necessarily need to go with one form or the other. If you feel that, go what's right for you, what you feel is appropriate.
No, definitely. And
Yeah.
in the previous episode, we've kind of broadly sketched what meditation is. So, quickly rehashing it,
Yeah.
there's the typical meditations that most people know: concentration meditation. You
Yeah.
concentrate on the breath, on the
Yeah.
body, perhaps on a mantra you keep saying in your head, and so forth, and your attention wanders, you bring it back. Then there's open awareness meditation, in which you just notice everything that appears. And this gives you all kinds of insight into your own mind, but also in the fleetingness of, thoughts and emotions. And this really creates this new kind of relationship to thoughts and emotions that can be so freeing. And then there's cultivation meditations, in which you cultivate certain states of mind, like equanimity, like contentment, like loving kindness, and so forth. And all three are very important. I would say the basis, the start would be a concentration meditation, just building up some concentration, because meditation in essence is training your attention. And there needs to be nothing woo-woo or definitely not supernatural. There's nothing supernatural about it. There's nothing religious. It doesn't have to be connected to any kind of rituals, but if that helps you, that's definitely fine as well. But so just training your attention. And by training your attention, you will not only start to feel that you can concentrate much better, it will help your work or your studies and so forth. But also, what it will definitely do is it will train your brain not to wander as much, and to have attention and a kind of positive attention for everything that's around you. And as we covered in the last episode, well, the quality of your attention is what determines the quality in terms of happiness, the quality of your life, much more than your external circumstances. Remember our example of sitting on the beach with a cocktail or washing the dishes. When are you happier? Well, that really depends on what your mind is doing at that time, right? So you can feel awful on that beach when you're with a problem of work, and then you're just, ruminating about that, and you can be very happy washing the dishes.
Yeah.
So it's all about attention, and meditation trains your attention in a way you want it to train it. So that's basically it.
Wonderful, wonderful.
All right. Keeping on going. So now I think we're at 5, right? So we've had, understanding your genetic programming, developing the good habits, not tampering with your happiness hormones, the healthy lifestyle, meditation, the 4th. And so the 5th is so important to not just, keep your happiness training to meditation. You need to extend that in your daily life. And this is where the 5th one and the 6th one and the 7th one are going to come in, right? So the 5th one is you need to make a habit to observe mental reactions and not just feed that reaction with thoughts. And this takes time. And meditation will help you with that, because then you're just observing without reacting. But you need to extend that in daily life. So whenever something triggers you and there's anger or fear or stress and so forth, well, take a deep breath and observe the physical sensations. Observe the thoughts without feeding those thoughts. Just notice what's happening, and you will be amazed at how quickly you return back to a serene state of mind. And from that serene state of mind, then you can deal with whatever triggered you, whatever problem is out there. If there's actually a problem, perhaps there's none. Perhaps your mind is just wandering towards and fantasizing about problems. But if there's a problem, you will be much more apt to solve it in an efficient way, and you will not punish yourself so long with these negative emotions.
So this is also where you say have the mental awareness to realize that you are not your emotion, right? That's
Exactly.
kind of like so that the emotion passes. Where
you observe the emotion, you
Yeah.
observe the thoughts, you're not, completely taken over by these reacting into the world, venting the emotions.
Yeah.
Again, this does not mean suppressing the emotion and staying stoically calm, but inside, being all tied
boiling.
up, especially not. This is what you need to prevent at all costs.
Yeah.
It means completely accepting the emotion, focusing on the physical sensations. Remember the SABRE protocol we mentioned last time in last episode, which can really help you if you're in the grips of negative emotions.
Yeah.
And so observe, not react. This can revolutionize your life. And again, be kind with yourself. This is much easier said than done. And maybe you can start small with small irritations, small levels of stress, and then you can gradually work your way up to more and more challenging situations.
Yeah. I like what you said. Sorry, I don't mean to read through previous interviews, but you said, how long does the emotion last? It's very short, right? It's kind of like...
Well, neuroscience shows that if you don't feed a negative emotion with more thoughts, it shouldn't last longer than 90 seconds, a
Yeah, there
minute
you
and a
go.
half. That's the
Yeah,
time your body needs to
yeah,
absorb the cortisol, the adrenaline, and so
yeah,
forth.
yeah,
So if you're in the grip of a negative emotion for longer than that, and I think we all have, then you know that you're feeding into that emotion. And
yeah,
the paradoxical thing is you want to free yourselves from the emotion, you want to get rid of that emotion as quickly as possible, but what you're doing is actually making it more intense and lengthening it.
yeah,
And understanding this and understanding this mental pattern that does this is incredibly freeing. And
yeah,
this is what it means to observe and not react.
yeah. Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you.
And then once we've kind of made these sticks, these negative mental reactions, once we've freed ourselves from them, then we can actually also work on the positive side. And this is equally important. We need to develop in our daily life, gratitude and contentment. You can make this a daily habit to kind of focus on all the things that go well, for which you are grateful in your life. And I cannot stress enough the importance of doing this, together with the importance of getting rid of these negative mental reactions. This is going to create a deeply, deeply satisfying life in which you are mostly freed from all of these negative emotions. If you work on these elements, working on sticks, working on the fake carrots, not pursuing those, doesn't mean you can't have any ambition, but knowing that your happiness is not going to come from some success in the future. Your happiness is here and now, and you can cultivate a deep satisfaction, a deep gratefulness for the world around you exactly as it is.
Yeah.
And so daily having 5 or 10 things, and maybe you can write them down, and whatever works for you, and you need to bring creativity into that, for which you are grateful, and really listing them, maybe communicating them to others. I like to do it with my kids, like ask them at the end of the day, okay, name me 3 good things that happened today. And I do it as well, and so this really, really has a major impact. I mean, research shows this can even lift people out of a depression, and this is for people who are not depressed also. This is something that can really, enhance the satisfaction you have with your life.
Yeah, for me, this is a segue into journaling, because I've been journaling now for 4.5 years, and I really enjoy it. There's one method that I would like to give a shout out here, which is called bullet journaling. And bullet journaling is actually a combination of your to-do lists, that I'm sure many people have to-do lists, and the majority of us, they write it on a post-it or kind of on a little piece of paper, and then it disappears somewhere. But if you start by putting your to-do lists in a journal and combine your to-dos with kind of what you say as gratitude and your observations, then you have a running, growing, working journal. So I would suggest for people to check out Bullet Journal. If you Google that, you will get loads of suggestions. It's a very easy method. There's a very easy book that you can get into. I kid you not, it changed my life, right? The other thing that I want to say here with journaling is also be kind for yourself here, because it's not going to work from one day to the other, right? Journaling is also a habit, and you need to learn that habit. So it was only in year 3 that I really became very good at journaling, and that I really felt the results of it. So also there, be kind to yourself. Just go back to the journal. Don't punish yourself when you skip a day. Just go back, right? Like you go back to the mat for yoga, go back to your journal and start writing again. Don't punish yourself for, oh, now it's gone, or whatever, that streak mentality. It doesn't matter. And I think that that is a very important element here to consider. And then the last thing that I have is I keep those journals. So I have them here, and I can then look at when I started. You can look back into those journals and see how it kind of evolved and how it worked for you. And I keep log of everything. The books that I read, my observations around these books, very quickly, right? So it's not like, oh, dear journal, here's what's happened to me today. If you're not into that, it doesn't need to be that wishy-washy. It could just be a task list. But that task list also give you a good overview of your day and can give you that gratitude level that you desire. So I just want to throw that out there, that's something that works very well for me and has worked for millions of other people in this world. And I just wanted to call that out here when we speak about gratitude.
Yeah, no, that's great, and then that can definitely be a good help and give you some structure to the practice.
Yeah.
Now, what I would also recommend, and something I do myself, is in addition to-do list, to have what I would call a to-be list.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so I've actually on a daily basis I roll the dice on really developing one of six virtues, I would call them. One is equanimity, another one would contentment, altruism, loving kindness, and so forth. So things you really want to develop in your life. And so, for instance, today I'm on an equanimity day, and it's a perfect fit, because I woke up and then there was a problem, and we needed to get a guy repairing something. I was almost late for this interview. I started to log in. I saw the internet was down, so I had to run to my in-laws, and then now everything worked out in the end. But so it really transformed the way you see these challenges, right? So I was like, okay, this is perfect. I've got a wonderful training here for my equanimity day, and staying as calm and centered as possible. And then actually being incredibly grateful for the fact that I know like 2-3 years ago, this would have stressed me out immensely. And I would have probably still solve my problems and still be here, but all flustered and so forth. And now it was like a very peaceful ride in which I was actually grateful for the training that was handed to me today. And so also and this also helps me, whenever bad things happen, whenever things that trigger you, seeing that as mental training. And not as, oh no, this sucks and this stands in the way of me being happy today. No, this actually is what is going to provide you with the tools to train, your equanimity, your contentment, your altruism, your loving kindness, these building blocks of happiness. Whatever challenges these things, well, is your training. And so be grateful for your training and know that if you handle these things better than you would have in the past, well, you can be very proud of yourself, you can be grateful, and you know that it's going to be easier the next time to handle them even better, to stay even more calm, more centered in the face of, troubles and so forth. So see your entire life as happiness training, and it's going to make every day much, much better, and it's going to yield wonderful fruits for the future.
Great. Wonderful. That's a very good tip. I'm gonna try to add it to my journaling practice, right? And again, be kind to yourself. If it doesn't work, then don't worry, right? People have different approaches, different tastes, different ways of doing things. So there's no right way, right? Every way is the right way, right? If you take on the challenge of trying to improve yourself, trying to improve your happiness, then that's already a big thumbs up, and you can take it from there. Be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and then from there on start building. Don't do it from dissatisfaction. Do it from a place of calm and a place of, as much as you can, happiness and self-acceptance in a certain way.
Yeah, very important as well. Exactly. There's a lot of practices here and a lot of steps you can take towards a happy life. What the most important practice and the most important steps for you are going to be at this point in your life, that will depend, and that will be different for everybody. Maybe, you really need to work on equanimity. Maybe first you need to get your lifestyle in order. Maybe contentment is more of an issue for you. And so work on what you think you will get the most benefit for at this point. And then you can work your way to other steps to a happier life. All right, and
Wonderful.
Then we're at number 7, and that is the mind wandering, right? So meditation will train your brain to wander less and to be more present and to have more attention for what goes on in your immediate environment. But you can also do that throughout the day. You can develop a bunch of habits that will help you there. Maybe you can set off an alarm better with, a nice sounding, easy alarm, a mindfulness alarm, as they call it, every hour or so, and then just take, a minute or even less, 3 mindful breaths and just soak it all in, tune into your senses. It may feel a bit weird and fake in the beginning, but actually you're training your brain to have more attention for what's going on around you in a positive way. And at the end of your life, the quality of your life will be determined by the way you spend every moment. And as we've seen in the previous episode, an untrained mind wanders for almost half of the time. So almost half of the time you are awake, your mind is wandering, if you're not training your mind not to wander. And we've also seen this, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. Like for the most part of mind wandering. People consider this as an unpleasant experience, more unpleasant than even very boring tasks they need to repetitive tasks they need to fulfill and so forth, right? So it's even if you're in the traffic jam, it's better to be aware of your surroundings than to let your mind run wild. I mean, that's what the research shows.
I don't know about you, but I am someone who really loves a true crime series. I just can't get enough of them. If I watch them on the streaming platforms, I really cannot stop binging on them. It really is a guilty pleasure. So if you're like me, then you are going to love coldcaseinc.com, which is a platform that offers you unsolved cases of fictional murder mysteries that you can solve. It's a great community of detectives that come together, offering you video and audio evidence, and step by step you can play the game of solving this murder mystery by yourself. We've paired up with the team at coldcaseinc.com, and if you use our code, which is the word MESSY in capital letters, MESSY, then you even get a 15% off your first online membership. So do check out coldcaseinc.com and get crime solving today. We are very happy to be partnering with the Code Zone, which is this amazing platform where people can come together to learn how to code. Creators and future makers, they all come together here, both children as well as adults, to learn how to code and develop things, like for instance their own videos or Minecraft mods. The team at CodeZone believes everyone should be able to learn how to code, young or old, and they've got these amazing subscriptions, very easy and very cheap. You'll learn a lot from them. You could do it live or you could do it in your own time at your own leisure. We highly recommend it. They are tailored to support individual interests and capabilities, and I'm sure that once you get hooked on the CodeZone, you never want anything more. Check it out, thecodezone.co.uk or the URL in our show notes.
So training your mind to have more attention, well, first of all, it will actually open you up to all of the beautiful things around you, and it will give you large chunks of your life back, which otherwise are lost in thoughts, which is an unpleasant experience.
I think this is a wonderful thing, and I'm going to call out a specific app that you can use to help you with this, because where we wonder, and you previously also mentioned social media, there's also a recent book out from a professor in the United States who describes social media as poison specifically for young girls, kids growing up under the age of 13. I believe that those are the crucial ages. There's an application called Self-Control. That's one that I use. Because when I wonder, so if I'm working and if I need to do something, then I'm very often distracted about something on social media. Right? And social media for me is not one thing. These are multiple platforms. You've got your Facebook, your Instagram, your YouTube, your LinkedIn, Twitter. There are too many of those. So many people, and this professor as well, who's in his 50s, he says, doing my work has just become a lot more difficult. But I'm a 50 plus year old man. I still manage. For someone who's under 13, that's going to be very difficult if they need to grow up with social media in such a way. There's an application that I use, and I'm sure there are many others, which is called Self-Control. And it's basically what you can set. It's like you can give the sites that you do not want to visit for the next 2 or 3 hours, and also give a time, right? So you could say, okay, for the next hour, I do not want to consult these sites. Even if I do it, because it's almost addictive, you go back to it in your browser or whatever. You can program the names of the sites that you know are your vices, are you're addicted to, and then say for the next 3 hours, even if I click on it, I want you then for it to show me an error message, right? So, and whenever you do it, because I caught myself, starting Self-Control, and then half an hour later, finding myself trying to go to that site. And then I get a reminder, this doesn't work. It's like, oh, that's true. I gave the order to Self-Control to not, to block this site for the next hour. And then you could also make that space that you want to make for your mind not to wander. So this is an easy tool, specifically in the beginning, that can help you for not having the bad replacement for, this time that you need to focus for your mind not to wander, and for yourself not to be tempted. Essentially, it's like a little lock on your fridge if you're into unhealthy food or whatever, just for the time being, right? And you can call the parameters here. So if you say that for the next hour, the next 2 hours, you can say which sides and the hour. So it's self-control, but it's self-imposed self-control, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that would be great to get rid of certain habits and addictive social media behavior and so forth. And so definitely a good way to tackle that. Now, by mind wandering, I actually mean something else. It's not like clicking on YouTube and then just starting to watch a bunch of movies. It's right. It's being lost in thought, and it happens all the time, right? And it has a function as well. But so there's an important gain in terms of happiness to have from training your mind to wander less and to be more concentrated, right? So you can watch a YouTube movie without mind wandering, or be on LinkedIn without mind wandering. If you're actually reading and engrossed in what you're seeing, that wouldn't be mind wandering. But this would be a different issue, but also a very, very important one as we've mentioned. But so once you'll start meditating, perhaps, and be more aware of it, you'll see how unruly that mind is. I mean, you cannot just concentrate on your breath for even a full minute. It will go all over the place. There will be thoughts invading, and before you know it, you will forget to focus on the breath. You will have forgotten the breath and forgotten the fact that you're meditating, and you will be lost in thought. And then you will come back, and you will come back, and you will come back, and you will notice this in your life as well. And being able to stay more present and having that mind wandering less, well, is something that can have an enormous impact on the quality of our life. So it's but it requires training.
No, 100%. I understand the idea of mind wandering. What triggered me to say this was in implementing it into your daily lives. Like, I spend 90% of my time behind the laptop, right? So if I'm going to take the time to allow myself to focus or to allow myself, then I need to make sure I block away all the temptations to give myself the space to do so, because otherwise it will be replaced, right? It will be replaced. The time that I need to meditate or the time that I need to create that headspace is going to be absorbed by me being on social media, where I have nothing to do, I can assure you, right? So it's just to prevent yourself from not taking that time, for coming up with some, futile excuse to then go to such a website, because at the end of the day the clock ticks on and you only have so many hours in a day to kind of start implementing. So it's just to resist the temptation. You don't necessarily need to be as strong. There are tools to help you with this. That's why I mentioned this.
That's a very good point. I mean, there's a paradox here, and research shows this. We've never had as much free time as we have today. So basically, generations now, we have more free time, there's more vacation and so forth than previous generations. But we've also never complained as much as today about a lack of, time to do whatever we want, so free time.
Yeah.
And that has everything to do with the fact that our attention and big chunks of our day are grabbed by in social media, cell phone, and so forth. And so we're just giving this time away. And then this will bring me to another important point, which is, the importance of flow activities. Right, so flow activities are activities that take a certain effort, but not too much. It means that you actually have the possibility of doing these things successfully, and there's often feedback about how well you're doing, where you are in the process. There's a goal at the end and so forth. So typical experiences of flow activity would be for people who are doing sport to do, to play their sport, but also dancing would be a typical flow activity if you're really immersed in it, or even having a conversation like this now, for me at least, is definitely flow activity. I'm engaged, I'm thinking about what I need to answer and so forth. And reading can be flow activity. What are not flow activities are things like mindlessly binge watching YouTube or Netflix and so forth. And so we've created a lot of these non-flow activities as a means of relaxing and taking time off. And research shows that, these flow activities actually make us much happier than these non-flow activities, and they make us much happier afterwards as well. So perhaps you've noticed that after 2 hours of binge watching some series on Netflix that doesn't take a lot of concentration or thinking, you don't feel great. You feel a bit groggy and drowsy, and perhaps you've noticed in your kids. I definitely have. When they're in front of a screen for too long, well, they're not feeling great afterwards, and they're irritated and so forth.
They're extremely cranky. I was about to say,
exactly.
if you turn the screen off, you get
Yeah.
these little monsters. They start screaming at you. And then that you overdid it with the screen, and they need then the time to, to find themselves again, because their brain has just kind of, it's been all over the place, or in that screen essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And if they would play outside with each other, and they would feel great afterwards.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And so the trouble is, we're doing less and less of these flow activities and more of these mindless relaxation activities. That doesn't mean you can never do that, and it can be very relaxing and de-stressing and so forth. But don't overdo it, and because it has not only an impact on how you feel in the moment itself, which is often not great after some time, but also the next hour and so forth. So it really radiates out into your life. And so having more of these flow activities, well, can be of great benefit to your happiness. So try to create some of these, options, and try to have as many of these as possible in your work context. That would be wonderful, but especially also in the time off you have. And that's a challenge today.
Yeah.
Remember, we have a Stone Age brain. It's not meant to find pleasure in mindlessly clicking on YouTube movies. It's meant to find pleasure in spirited conversations and perhaps dancing around a tribal fire and so forth. And that brain hasn't changed. And today we've created a lot of relaxation options that aren't actually conducive to our long-term happiness. So important to be aware of that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to get into an entire social media element again, but it also, what you said about we are used to work in groups, and the absorption of content is actually a very kind of individual thing, right? It's just you and the screen. So it goes against our nature of doing things together. And this is also what this professor said. He says, like, people are becoming isolated. Young children are becoming isolated because of that screen, because it gives this fake sense of togetherness, but it's not, right? The social media isn't being together. It isn't doing something social. It's you and a screen at the end of the day, whereas they need to play outside with each other. And there's nothing that can beat that. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's a beautiful segue to my next and penultimate point, and that is, invest in social relationships. Remember the Harvard study? We've mentioned it in a previous episode. Like, the longest study on happiness revealed one crucial element in not only a happy life, but also a healthy and a long life, and that is the quality of our social relationships. So we're social beings, and in order to be happy, we need to be surrounded, and we need to lovingly interact with people in our close environment.
Yeah.
So invest in those relationships. Also, and I've mentioned this as well, like at the end of our lives, what we often regret is not spending enough time with our loved ones. Working too much is actually something that's very high up the list of what people regret the most. Not cherishing our friends enough. So we know this, but often we fail to give it the priority and the attention it deserves. This is our ticket to long-lasting happiness. And not only these close, loving connections with other people, but also, if you can, start living a life of service to others, helping others, being altruistic. Research clearly shows that people who are above average altruistic, who are more altruistic than average, well, they are also, and this is a massive difference, much happier than average. And obviously, the causal arrow can point in both directions. Altruism definitely makes you happy, but also happier people tend to be more altruistic.
Yeah.
But just, doing something nice for other people really has an important effect on our happiness. There was this interesting research recently, and they gave, I think it was $20 or $50 to all of the participants. Half of the participants, they told them, you need to buy something for yourself today with this. All right? So they went out and they bought something for themselves. The other half, needed to spend that money on somebody else, and they could choose. That was maybe a person they knew, or to charity even, and they could choose. They just needed to spend the money not on themselves but on somebody else. Guess who was happier at the end? Well, the people who spent it on somebody else.
Yeah.
And the positive effect of that was even measurable in the weeks afterwards, right? So there was this positive afterglow. And we don't really know this. We think, well, it's nice to be nice to others, but it's more fun to be nice to ourselves. But actually, the research shows this is not the case. We misjudge that. It's actually being altruistic, helping others, making other people happier is actually an amazing source of happiness for ourselves.
Yeah.
If only everybody knew this, we'd live in a wonderful world. So making other people happier makes you much happier. It's a win-win.
100%. The only devil's advocate here, the only thing that I would say, which I've also learned, is make sure you do not pour from an empty cup, right? I do think altruism, you need to have the right base to start a good altruistic behavior, right? Altruism doesn't, in my book, let me put it this way. In my book, it doesn't mean that I should not eat before I give food to someone else, right? To a certain level. It doesn't mean I don't need to overeat. I don't need to go to a fancy restaurant or whatever. I don't need to overconsume, but I do need to make sure that I understand which basis I need to give to someone else. And the reason that I say that is like sometimes I see people who are in an overly altruistic treadmill that then kind of feel abused somewhere down the line, or that feel kind of big. And I think the reason for that is that the motivation for their altruism might come from someplace else than thinking I have enough, right? I think they want to do something else with altruistic behavior than how it should work. Let me put it that way.
Yeah,
Does
I
that
think
make
I
sense?
see where you're getting, and it definitely makes sense. What I'm talking about is not an eagerness to please.
Yeah.
Right, and so this can be a detriment to happiness.
Yeah, that's what I
what
mean,
is this person going to think? And I need
Yeah.
to be nice, otherwise this is a very poor motivation, and this is not going to make you happy. This is feeding anxiety, social anxiety, and so forth. And
That's
so
maybe
we've
more what I mean.
covered
Yeah.
how to deal with anxiety. Now, altruism is a genuine wish to help other people, to make other people better, and this is a massive. This massively increases your happiness.
Yeah.
So it's not about always thinking about others and putting all of your self-interests, having that take a backseat. It's not one or the other, right? So take care of yourself, take care of others, and this last thing will take care of yourself as well.
Yeah.
So no need to choose there.
Yeah. No, I like that, the eagerness to please, because if you're too much on that, then you do it for the wrong reasons, because you're still looking for a confirmation to the people that you have given to. And I think that might be wrong, kind of, because somewhere down the line you didn't do step 1 to 6, so to say.
Exactly, and you're fueling your anxiety.
Yeah, you're fueling your anxiety.
Behavior
exactly.
That fuels anxiety. So
and therefore it's not altruism in its purest form. It's something else. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, and then we came at the final point, and it may sound a bit paradoxical, but I think it's important to mention it as well. Don't make happiness your direct goal, right? This may sound paradoxical because we've been talking about how to be happier for these last episodes. But if you're going to focus on, I need to be happier, I'm not happy enough, this is actually, just feeding dissatisfaction as well, right? So don't focus on how happy you feel. And this is so important. What you need to focus on, and then happiness will follow. But what you need to focus on are these 3 important pillars of happiness. Equanimity, not feeding the negative emotions. Contentment, and gratitude for what's going on around you, and loving interactions. That's all. And if you focus on these 3, you will have an amazingly, deeply satisfying life in which you free yourself mostly from negative mental reactions. And this is really what happiness is about. So happiness will follow, but don't aim for, I need to feel better than I felt last week and so forth. And this is actually just, enhancing your unhappiness.
Yeah. Wonderful. This is so amazing. These 10 points. Can we quickly do 1 to 10? Not the explanation, but do you have like a short list just for the last time to repeat it, that everyone who's now making notes, such as myself, gets it?
Yeah, definitely. So, and I skipped the order a little bit because I wanted to kind of build on what you just said sometimes. Yeah. But so the 10 points, as I have listed here: understand your genetic programming, develop good habits, don't tamper with your happiness hormones, live a healthy lifestyle, meditate regularly, observe in daily life, don't react, develop contentment and gratitude, keep coming back to the present moment from mind wandering. Don't strive for happiness. Don't make happiness your aim. Go for flow activities, not only mindless, relaxing activities. And live closely to and also for the benefit of others.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll set you up for an amazingly, deeply satisfying life. Not at the vicissitudes of things in your external environment, or not as much. And I wish it to all of the listeners, and I hope it could inspire you.
It surely has inspired me, Michael. So you have one follower, one very loyal follower already, if not more. And seeing that you have a second print of your book, I'm pretty sure more people will want to become a part of this and will want to work on their own happiness. This was really an amazing journey we've done. This is the 5th interview, and I think we're at the end of our 5th interview here. So we've gone through how to become happier every single step of the way. I profoundly enjoyed it. I consider this to be a flow activity, these conversations with you, so I can build on becoming a happier person altogether. Any final thoughts you want to share with people? Where can they find out more about you? That's michaelvlerick.com. That's your website. Exactly. Anywhere else I should look?
There's stuff on YouTube as well that you can look. But my website is a good basis, and you find some information there.
Yeah. As will these 5 interviews will be offered as kind of a masterclass podcast series, sub-series on YouTube as well. But we'll give you all the details for that. Let's not get into kind of the logistics of all of this, because these conversations are so beautiful. And we sincerely hope they helped you. You can always also write to us, and we will make sure to share it with Dr. Michael Vlerick at info@teachpitch.com if you have any questions, or if you want to know more about the work of Michael, or if you want some more practical tips, and we'll be sure to help or to forward this to Michael. Yeah, I mean, it's been an amazing journey. Thank you so very, very, very much for your time. Michael, I'm going to be sad after this, because this is our last interview, so we won't have our weekly catch-up anymore. But I'm sure further down the line, we're going to hear a lot more of you, and perhaps in your very busy, happy schedule, you're going to find some time to come back to Messy and Masterful, the podcast where it all started for you. Let me claim that.
Exactly, Aldo. It's always such a pleasure. I'm already missing it, so I'll be happy to come back whenever you call.
Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Vlerick.
Pleasure. Thank you, Aldo.
If you liked this episode, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Philip Anderson for our beautiful theme music. This episode was edited by Natalie Piles with production assistance from Genta Metalia.